Good morning and welcome to Embrace Church Darlington. If this is your first time, you're especially welcome. And even if it's not, even if it's your 10th or 100th time, you're just as welcome, of course. Today we're continuing our series of God and. We kicked off last week with God and race, such a hot topic. And we're continuing another hot one today, God and politics. We want all of these talks to be really relevant to everyday life. So yeah, we're not dodging anything. I hope we're not anyway. But before I continue, just want to say happy Father's Day to everyone out there that applies to. Biological dads, non-biological dads. And even if you're not in that category, if you're a male, well, be a dad to someone, be a father to someone in a looser term, a looser way. But, you know, how the world needs good Christian male role models. So you never know who's watching, you never know who's looking up to you, you never know who's imitating you. So be a good role model. And I just want to say as well to all the single mums out there who are doing the job of mum and dad, well done to you too. And I bless and pray for all of you today. Happy Father's Day. So, God and government. What do we mean by that? God and politics. Politics definition, one of the definitions I read was this: the activities associated with the governance of a country or area, especially the debate between political parties and power. Now, I've heard some people say government and religion shouldn't mix, politics and religion shouldn't mix. But what if I said politics and race shouldn't mix, politics and gender shouldn't mix? You would be rightly outraged. It doesn't seem very tolerant then, does it, to say politics and religion or politics and Christianity shouldn't mix? Surely in politics everything should be open for debate. And if you're a Christian, it's impossible to have a view on something. Surely that's not shaped by God, not shaped by the Bible. So we especially shouldn't be saying politics and religion don't mix. It affects every aspect of our lives. Politics affects our income, our pension, how much we pay now towards our pension, our education, our NHS, our police, just everything. So I really think you should be interested in politics, even if at this time you're not. Let me encourage you to get interested, to get involved. And I'm going to give a little finish later on just to hammer on the point as to why you should be involved, to some degree at least, in politics. Let me say straight away, I'm not endorsing a political party today. I'm not going to mention political parties. I'm not going to mention politicians. I'm looking simply at what does God through the Bible say about politics. So this is the journey today. 1, the role of government according to the Bible. 2, the role of the Christian according to the Bible. And 3, some practical ideas. Straight away, let me say, Daniel 4 points out that God is in control. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" God is in control. Always has been, always will be. That's the first thing. God is the ultimate government. He needs to be in our lives, and he is ultimately across all nations. Moving on, Romans 13 says this: let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? If God is in control, he is therefore allowed or even established all governments that have ever existed. And remember, this was written at a time when the Roman Empire was at its greatest. And that wasn't necessarily pleasant government. Unless you were well in the Romans, it wasn't very pleasant at all. It was quite barbaric at times, very brutal at times. And yet we could write in the Bible, we can see in the Bible that it says that we are to understand that that government was established by God. Even the Nazi government was permitted by God in God's great purpose and God's great authority and God's great power. We might not always understand it. It feels almost instinctively to disagree with it, but we know that God is in control. God ultimately has his final say. Romans 13:3-4 says this: do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. So governments on earth are actually meant to be God's representatives. They're meant to be. Some may do that better than others. Some may intend to do that. I think we know that many have no intention of being God's representatives. That doesn't mean they can't do some good things. But governments are actually meant to be God's servants, to almost carry out God's wrath when we do wrong. Agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer, it said. To be God's representative of rule on this earth. How many governments do that well? That's up for debate, isn't it? But that's meant to be the role of government, the role of political leaders. That's how it's meant to be. We can debate, as I say, how well they do that. And ultimately, they will stand before God and face justice for the decisions they made and the actions they carried out, as will we all, of course, in our own lives. So government, the role of government was to be a representative of God's rule and leadership and authority on this earth. So what about you, the role of the Christian? If you're a Christian watching this, it says this in Romans that if we rebel against the government, we are rebelling against what God has instituted. If God has put these governments in place, or at least allowed them to come to power, if we're rebelling against them, we're actually rebelling against God. We are to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. Actually, we should be doing the right thing because it's good to do the right thing. And yeah, governments can carry out legal punishment, whether that's imprisonment or something else, for us not doing the right thing. We are to obey the government. It continues in Romans, it says this is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honour, then honour. Can you see there that there are two sides to obeying the government? It's one, if you have to pay taxes, the financial aspect. They do say, don't they, that there are only two things certain in life, death and taxes. There's probably a lot of truth in that. But we have to pay our taxes. We are to obey the government. But also not just in obeying the rules, but also it's to be a heart thing. Respect and honour. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, about how we can practically respond. But, it's not just an obeying the rules thing, but it's respecting and honouring them. And I will go into that a little bit more of how we can do that. Jesus said this in Mark 12, when being asked about authority. He summed it up brilliantly when he said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. We obey God and we obey the ruling authorities. We might not agree with the ruling authorities. We might not have voted for the ruling authorities. We might think they're doing the wrong thing in all our blown up human wisdom. But we're to obey them. You might think, well, I can drive down the motorway safely at 100 miles per hour. I'm capable and my car is able. But if the law says 70, well, you stick to the law. That's how it is. That's how it is. Question, what if a biblical law is gone against by a law of a government? What if a law of a government goes against a biblical law? That's a better way of saying it, isn't it? Let me read this from Acts 5 about some of Jesus' disciples, apostles. The apostles were brought in and made to appear before the Sanhedrin to be questioned by the high priest. We gave you strict orders not to teach in his name, he said. Yet you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us guilty of this man's blood. Peter and the other apostles replied, we must obey God rather than human beings. So it seems as if those in charge locally at that time had said to the disciples, "Hey, stop preaching about Jesus." But clearly elsewhere in the Bible, Matthew 28 and so on, we're commanded to preach about who Jesus is, what he's done, and why it's good to follow him. So I think a clear mandate there that if it's something totally unbiblical that our government has introduced, we do not have to follow that. Now, don't quote me on that. If you're facing a nice conversation with the police or a judge, but I do believe that we must obey God rather than human beings. But that's not an excuse for not paying taxes and that sort of thing. So let's sum up. God is in control. God has allowed or even instituted all government, local and national governments, that have ever been in power, including the ones we really, really don't like. Governments are supposed to represent God's rule and authority on this earth and implement his rules and authority. We know that that rarely happens, sadly. Christians particularly, you're meant to obey the laws because it's just the right thing to do. If a law of a government goes against God's law, then I believe we have freedom to ignore that law, although of course there may be consequences. And I say that seriously. Okay? So 3, some practical ideas. 1, pray for your government. We're commanded to do that in 1 Timothy. Pray for your leaders. Pray for your government. Pray for your council. It doesn't matter if you like them or not. In fact, maybe if you don't like them, you should be praying for them all the more. Pray that they make godly decisions. Pray that they do the right things. Help them. Pray for them to not fall into sin and temptation, but to be good representatives, to be good role models. How we need good role models in politics and every area of human life. So pray for them. They've got a very difficult job where every little mistake or disagreement is all over the newspapers, all over the TV, all over social media. They just get bashed and pushed from pillar to post. You might say sometimes rightly and fairly, well, maybe, but pray for them to do the right thing. 2, praise them. Okay, so don't just be someone who on social media, on Facebook or whatever, is just continually doing down a particular person or a particular party. What does that say about you, particularly if you're a Christian? We're better than that. We should have it in us to say well done to someone when they do something well. We should have that within us. If you're a Christian and you can never praise someone, then you're putting political party above humanity and above Christianity. And we shouldn't be putting party above humanity and above Christianity. So if you're someone who generally just contacts your MP or councillor to have a go at them, or post something to have a go at them, well, when they do something well, just say so as well. Just put on Facebook, well done to such and such for whatever it was they did. And then don't write another sentence saying, but you're still useless, you should have done this, you should have done that about those other things. Just let praise be praise. Don't go over the top, don't flatter them. Don't say something you don't mean. That's actually lying, isn't it, really, in a sense? Just say well done for whatever it was and to whoever it was. Otherwise, we're not better than anyone else, are we? And we're called to be salt and light. We're called to be better than that. So 1, pray for them, our leaders, our government, our politicians. 2, praise them. 3, persuade them. Get active. Okay, get active. Contact them and speak up on issues. Not to hammer them personally, not to criticise them personally, but just to point out what you think is the right thing. You don't have to quote chapter and verse. That probably isn't all that helpful, actually. But persuade them. Okay, point out some statistics on things you're against, like abortion or whatever it is. Point out that human life is valuable, whatever it is. Okay, so persuade them. Number 4, partner with them. That's a big step. Partner with them. Look to join with them. If they're doing a litter pick, well, let's see if we can join in. If politicians are doing some good and worthy cause with some good and worthy thing, well, let's see if you can join in personally, or if we can join in as a church. And by the church, I mean, the big church, not just our local churches. So we've had 1, pray; 2, praise; 3, persuade; 4, partner; and 5, participate. You could be sat there and you could be a good, godly Christian politician using that power and influence to do good in your town, in your street, in your world. And you could participate. And there's a call. If you're watching and you've been thinking about this, or even if you haven't, take some time to pray about this. Could that be you? Could that be you? We want to see Christian educators, Christians in the police, Christians in the justice system, Christians in the factories, Christians in schools, Christians in politics. We want Christians everywhere. That could be you. So, let me finish off with this quote from Plato. I said that I would finish with a reason why you should get involved in politics at any and every level. Because Plato said this: one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Quite a funny one, that. But we think we have all the answers, don't we? And we often think we know better and we put the world to rights. Well, give it a go. Give it a go. What I will say is, just really to finish off, is that before I was a Christian, I used to think politics was the answer. I didn't believe there was a God. This was in my teens and into my early 20s. I thought only political systems could make this world better. And I found that it never did. It could improve things to some degree. And I always have hope that political parties and politicians at every level, government, national, local, whatever, can improve things. I believe all politicians probably want to improve things. But it will never change a human heart. They can help persuade us, sometimes with rewards, sometimes with punishments. But governments, politics, political systems, even great democracies will never change a human heart. Only Jesus can do that. Only Jesus, by his victory on the cross, his resurrection, his love and forgiveness, only Jesus can change our hearts. And so if you're watching this and you've not yet chosen to follow Jesus, 1, get involved in politics, but 2, and much more importantly than 1, check Jesus out. He was the ultimate great governor. He was the ultimate perfect politician. I'm stretching things a little bit there with analogies, but he really was the great government. That bit really is literally true. Was and is and always will be. So if you want to follow the great governor, start following Jesus. Amen.